It's called. Right, we've got 9 seconds. Hello and welcome to the agenda on Politics Social, and it's me, Graham Hughes, and I'm joined, as always, by Phil Moorhouse from a different bias. Welcome to everyone in the chat as well. It's our first agenda for a month. I think last time we spoke, did Trump just... No, the last time we had an agenda, we just had the budget. So, yeah. How's the last week? What have you been up to? What have you been up to? Fill us in.
Lots of things. I would just be telling you, we've been having an extension bill which has been occupying a lot of our time because it's been a tale of two halves. One builder who's done his job properly, and another guy who works with them who arsed everything up.
Oh, bugger.
Never mind. But it's done now. It's fine. I've now got internet in there, so I can use my new... I have a VR headset now for exercise purposes.
Oh, fantastic. I left my mic on the camera, so everyone's shouting at me that I was really echoey just then with the intro. So we're just finding our feet again. He only says fixed. So that's good. So yeah, is all your building been done now? It's going to be no more banging.
It's been done. So now we've just got to get the garden done, which we have a date for that in the first week of January. Because at the moment it looks like the SOM. You know, that thing that Lee Anderson keeps saying that men have to deal with all the time.
Yeah. I had to deal with 7 SOMs this morning just to go to the shop to get some milk. It was awful. Do you know how many like men? So there's 8 billion people on the planet, and half of them are men, so 4 billion people. And of them, do you know how many people actually had to fight in the Somme?
You're going to tell me, you're the historian.
None. No one, because no one who fought in the Somme is still alive. Zero out of 4 billion. But you know, men have to deal with it.
Yeah.
What about the Somme? But yeah, it's a strange one, isn't it?
It is a strange, and it's literally strange because like Reform UK attract women as well. So like when you've got a woman going, we have all these issues to deal with, which is perfectly true.
What about the war though?
We don't really have anything. I mean, what do we have? Like when we're going through adolescence, our pubic hairs will get caught in our bell end now and then. That's annoying. But then when you get past that, we don't really have major problems. And women do.
You get an embarrassing erection on the bus. And you have to put your bag in front of your crotch.
That's awkward.
So no one will notice,
so,
you know.
But I mean, that's when you're young. When you're older, you're sort of like, it's not so, you deal with it. Whereas women have problems when they're young and problems when they're older. So anyway, someone's going on about this thing, and Lee Anderson tries to fight back for men, but the Battle of the Somme, that's what we had to deal with.
It's not like they're absolutely obsessed with World War One or nothing. Jesus Christ. It's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing. And I can't understand how they don't see it as embarrassing, because it's like, shouldn't he show a bit of solidarity with what are quite a lot of their voters as well? It's not like they only attract men. I know a lot of people put the emphasis on like, you know, young men and stuff like that, but there's a lot of women support Reform UK. Anyway.
They should do like a mastermind round where every question he just answers with like Spitfires, the Somme,
and what they should do, I'll tell you what they should do.
V2 rockets.
They should give him a picture of 4 planes and ask him to actually point out the Spitfire. Ooh, and the Hurricane.
That'd be good.
Spitfire and the Hurricane. Because the Spitfire is actually quite distinctive. You probably could point that out, but I bet you he couldn't pick out a Hurricane.
Or a Lancaster bomber. Or a Wellington bomber. Yeah. Do you know your Lancasters from your Wellingtons? That's what I want to know.
No.
Yeah,
I bet he doesn't either.
No, he doesn't. No, he wouldn't. But just the fact that like his first reaction to like any statement is like, the war. What about the war? Why is no one talking about the war? It's like, and Terry Christian makes a good point about this. No one talks about the Boer War. No one goes on and on and on about the bloody Boer War. You know, loads of people died. Does he? Oh yeah.
I actually got into trouble. One of the first videos I had demonetized was when Jacob Rees-Mogg was actually talking about it as if it was a good thing. You know, and I got demonetized because I was talking about concentration camps, because we introduced them.
Yes.
In the Boer War.
We did. Yes. And what he said that it was uplifting or something, didn't he?
No, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was sparked. The video was sparked by something Jacob Rees-Mogg had said about the Boer War.
Ivan Ambrose, thank you very much for the super chat. And I might even have a super chat animation. I don't know. Yes, I do. Woohoo! Thank you, Ivan. Did you hear about the racist Tory baroness yesterday?
Yes.
3-week suspension is an absolute insult. Yeah. Was this the one who called someone Lord Poppadom? Was this?
Yeah.
This? Yeah, I mean, that is disgraceful.
And it's not an isolated incident.
Isn't that what Jay Goody got into trouble for like 20 years ago on Big Brother? Like, have we not moved on?
But no.
Was there something else as well?
I can't remember. But it's like this sort of behaviour apparently it's not a one-off for them.
Right.
But,
3-week suspension though. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to be talking today about Labour, because this used to be Labour Social, so we should talk about them a little bit. And they're in government now as well.
Yes.
And some have been saying that Labour have been letting people down left, right, and centre because they haven't been doing their manifesto pledges. Now there was, while I was away, there was a petition that was signed by 3 million bots, and basically saying we should have another general election, which is a bit rich considering these are the same people who wanted to have one referendum,
I was really
and that was
disappointed with
the end of the universe. Yeah.
My big disappointment with that. So the government, obviously, because it got to like 10,000, had to give a statement. And unfortunately, the statement was not, you lost, get over it.
But missed opportunity there, definitely. Yeah. But the excuse for the manifesto, for the petition was that Labour have failed to deliver on their promises. Half of me's thinking, well, they've only been in charge for like 6 months. I mean,
they have actually delivered on their promises. What they're getting into trouble for is doing stuff that they neither promised to do nor ruled out.
Yeah.
In the manifesto, that is. Now, farmers will say, oh, but Steve Reed ruled out changes to something or other, not the inheritance. Yeah, actually, I think it might have been the inheritance, but there was another thing as well, one of the reliefs for farms in 2023, but it wasn't in the manifesto.
So we couldn't put it to the test then. So when it comes to the promises that they made, could you argue that they said that they weren't going to put taxes up, but then they put taxes up?
No, they didn't say they wouldn't put taxes up.
For millionaires?
I keep pointing out, they brought out this 6 first steps, which is the first page. It's on page 10 because there's like 10 pages like blank crap. But the first page of any policies in the manifesto has these 6 first steps. And there's 3 tax rises in them. So what they said is they wouldn't increase taxes on working people.
Yeah.
So that's what they were trying to suggest there. Now, taxes are sort of going up for working people, but they're Tory taxes. So, for example, fiscal drag with the income tax brackets remain in place. But as Rachel Reeves made clear in the budget, that's a Tory tax policy, and it was set for a few years. And when that's set to end, she will increase them with inflation. Now, yes, she could have chosen to increase them with inflation from next year, and so she's chosen not to, but it's still a Tory tax thing.
Right.
That's why she also didn't put up fuel duty, where a lot of people thought she might, because I was thinking that would be the dodgy one, because that would be a tax on working people. That would be a tax increase on working people.
Yeah.
And she made again a point of that, saying that the reason she's not doing it is specifically because they'd said they wouldn't put up taxes on working people.
Yeah.
So that's, because it would have been better economically, definitely, especially with the latest news. It would have been better if Labour, ahead of the election, could have just said, we're going to put national insurance back up to where it was at the start of the year because the Tories cannot afford this tax cut. They've conned you all. We're going to put it back where it was, but then we will not raise it any higher.
Yeah.
But they obviously felt that was too airy-fairy. Or what, I don't know, because I'm not part of their discussions. But that would have been better, because then it would have they wouldn't have had to put up the employer's national insurance then, and there wouldn't be all the aggro over that.
So, well, you've got that, and then you've got. We'll talk about this in a moment, but I'll come back to what's his name? Wes Streeting.
Yeah.
Like he's not very popular. I've got to say, even with people who are Labour diehards, they are quite frankly just gobsmacked that he is going down the route that he is in terms of the NHS and how he thinks the best way to deal with the black hole that the Tories left us with, in terms of waiting lists and things like that, and moving towards more privatised health in order to get out the backlog. But also there's a big social issue here where they decided yesterday, I think it was, that they're going to continue the gender
they decided some time ago, didn't they?
For teenagers. And this is obviously...
No, only trans teenagers.
Oh, yeah, not all teenagers.
Other teenagers are fine getting it. Yeah, they're okay.
I mean, what's going on with this? I mean,
well,
sorry, hang on. Before we go on, Ivan's just dropped a super chat in. Again, thank you very much, Ivan, for that. That ridiculous petition calling for another general election, the most ridiculous petition in the universe, is being debated in Parliament in the new year on Monday, the 6th of January. I think they'll give it a short shrift. Yeah. But yeah, go on. So, I mean, what are they thinking? Like, why even go here?
I don't know. Like, politically speaking, it's very low saliency. So my conclusion has to be that he genuinely thinks this is the right decision. But first of all, she's not actually an expert. She's not. I'm not saying she's not an expert in anything, but she's not an expert. She wasn't a sufficient expert for this report. The report was commissioned. It's not a peer-reviewed scientific report.
No,
it's a report commissioned by a minister who doesn't believe trans people exist and now doesn't believe sandwiches exist.
Yes, we should talk about this.
And the cash review doesn't actually recommend the action that Streeting's even taken. It doesn't say you should ban these treatments.
Yeah,
it doesn't even say that.
Do you think he's in the wrong party, as Alex has suggested in the chat?
No, I just think he's wrong on this issue. It's not a political thing. It's not political because it's not. Like, there are some positions that Labour have, and it's like, well, it's to attract certain voters. This doesn't do that because trans issues are incredibly low salience for everyone that is not trans, but it is quite high salience for people who are or know people. So it can only, for me, logically come about because he genuinely thinks he's making the right decision. I just don't know why he thinks that.
Do you think he's talking to the wrong people? Like, if
I think he's 100%
this kind of shit with the LGBT Alliance, this nonsense group based in Tufton Street. Yeah. I mean, how do we get to these Labour politicians then? How do we chat to them so they listen to what we've got to say? How do we commission reports and get them under the noses and lobby and do what the right?
Well, it's very difficult because, I mean, if you go back to like the Horizon issue, what was the big problem with the Horizon issue in the early days is that you had two groups of people. You had one group of people saying there's a problem with the Horizon system here, we're innocent. You had another group of people going, no, they're actually guilty and they're just trying to come up with excuses. Yeah. And ministers sort of had to believe a group of people, and therefore... And so just like any ordinary people, like even you or I, there are certain groups of people that if they've done or said something in the past that you think makes them not serious people, you don't give them much credit. Same sort of thing happening here. But I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I've said for a while, haven't I? Wes Streeting for me is not a suitable health secretary. I don't mind him being in the... ironically, as a former teacher, I probably wouldn't have minded him being education secretary. I don't think
I had my money on him being the first one in the cabinet to resign, but it wasn't. It was Victoria.
Louise Haig after some nonsense, absolute bollocks.
Anyway. So I kind of...
It's absolute
I didn't miss it, but I wasn't in the country for this. She resigned over the fact that she got mugged and she thought that she'd had her phone robbed during the violent mugging, and she didn't. And then it came out that she hadn't had the phone robbed. So, and then this went to court for some reason, and this was like 15 years ago.
Yeah,
What?
well, the reason it came to court, like, okay, she says it was an innocent mistake. Now, it may not have been. Like, young people sometimes think, I could use this to get a better phone out my employer. So, I mean, even if we take the fact that maybe she was a little dishonest there, it's still a ridiculous thing to have to resign over, because it's not like she hacked into an MP's internet account.
Yes.
Or
beat their partner up so badly
or
that
anything like that.
they got a criminal conviction like that
and
before.
actually incarcerated, a custodial sentence.
Yeah.
It was, from her point of view, she said she was advised to say nothing to the police, which obviously then put the police's back up, and then invited charges. And then when she was charged, she was then advised to plead guilty. So she's basically said, I had a bit of a shit solicitor in all this. So she shouldn't have even had the conviction she claims, and probably wouldn't have done if she no. And probably wouldn't have had a conviction. But even given that she had this conviction, it's a pretty pathetic conviction, really. And they're just trying to make a fuss about the fact, but you didn't declare it, anything like that. But she says she'd told Keir Starmer about it, and that on the ministerial declarations, it was for unspent convictions, and this is spent. Long time ago, because as she points out, she was not actually given a punishment for it. She has a conviction, but she wasn't even punished for it, because even the magistrate thought this is bollocks.
Yeah.
So
she was a victim of a crime. I mean, she was mugged. She didn't make that up. No. I mean, if she had made up that she'd been mugged and then wasted a load of police time and then claimed a bunch of stuff had been robbed that wasn't, I could sort of see, even years later, that could affect her ability to be a government minister. This was just ridiculous.
You say that, but I mean, Grant Shapps is a literal scam artist.
Yes, there's 17 different names, including Connie Stockheath.
An act. It's not even just his false names. He actually ran a get-rich-quick scheme that was basically, I can guarantee you this sort of return, and when you paid for it, he gave you a document saying what you should do is come up with your own get-rich-quick scheme and get people to buy into it.
This is time and time again, you see this, the left have to be purer than pure.
Yeah.
They also have to be poorer than poor as well. I mean, heaven forfend someone from a working class background buys themselves something nice, Phil. I mean, could you imagine that? They buy themselves something nice, whether they're a footballer or a politician. Well, that's got to be front page news. They bought themselves something nice, Phil.
I loved it when Angela Rayner, when they were going on about her that mint green outfit and how much it all costs, and I'm thinking that's still less than Rishi Sunak's shoes.
Yes, yeah. I know, but that's all right, because he was born rich, you see, and he went to Winchester, so he can spend as much as he likes on shit. But if you're working class, you've got to be purer than pure, whiter than white. You've got to not spend any money on anything.
And you know why they don't? Yes. Because you're allowed to have wealth, but you're not allowed to have income. It's like if you can afford to buy nice clothes, they're obviously paying you too much.
Yeah,
that's obviously what it's come from. So it's wealth is fine, salaries are not.
Do you agree with me about Wes Streeting? Like, I was a bit shocked that he wasn't the first to resign. Do you think there's a chance that he'll be on his way out soon, because he isn't popular? Like,
he is. Even Keir Starmer's had to tell him to keep his mouth shut recently over the assisted dying bill. Now, I knew it was a tricky one, but I didn't think any cabinet minister should have said anything about it publicly.
Right.
Because they are leaders. Cabinet ministers are quite senior. All of them have a bit of a following. There's not many technocrats. I mean, there's the odd one, maybe Bridget Phillipson. But, it's quite common in cabinets to have leaders of various little cliques within your party. So they're influential and people listen to them, particularly when you've got a load of new MPs who don't know the issues. You're going to take your lead from what you think are the senior members of your party. So I think cabinet ministers should have actually kept out of it. And, even if you sort of knew where they were, like everyone knew Keir Starmer was in favour, but didn't say anything during the debate itself. And apparently, but Wes Streeting and Shabana Mahmood both came out really strongly against it. And they're the two departments that need to implement it. So it was particularly bad for them. And apparently, according to reports, Wes Streeting was going on so much about it. Keir Starmer told us to shut up. Will you STFU?
Really? What, in the
I don't know that he'd use that
meeting?
language, but I don't know that he used that language, but he had apparently, according to reports, had to tell Streeting, "Can you shut up?"
Well, this is it. I mean, I can see how Streeting isn't just getting up the noses of people who work for the NHS and also people who are trans or trans allies. I can see that he's getting up the nose of the other people in Labour. I think that just the way he puts himself across, I think people find it irritating because he
is very good though. Like, he was on Question Time again last night and completely shot the Tory down. So he is he's on top of his brief, and he is very good at shutting up Tories who are trying to talk shit.
But he can do
so
that.
He's a good politician.
He can do that from the backbenchers, can't he?
No. I think I'd be very surprised. I think he is going to be Health Secretary for the remainder of this Parliament, at least.
Okay. All right.
But I mean, we'll just have to see what he does in general. I know. It was as soon as he was made Shadow Health Secretary, sorry, at the time I said I wouldn't have minded, because at the time you had both him and Bridget Phillipson moved up because they were both seen as potential leaders for the future. And I remember at the time saying, I wish you'd done it the other way around.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about Bridget Phillipson at all. But, you know, Wes Streeting's been on my radar for a few years, and I did think, I wish you hadn't made him help. I would have even accepted education, because he is on top of his brief. He knows stuff. He is hardworking. He makes sure he knows things.
I think
I just thought he would have been fine in education.
I think his own personal, preferences or whatever you want to call it, like his own opinions, I think they cloud his judgment. I think he has very strong opinions about
a lot of people do
this and that, and if he's got strong opinions about assisted dying and about trans healthcare and about the privatization of the NHS, I mean,
the thing about the privatisation thing is, though, he really isn't pro-privatisation. Like, he's even he's much further to the left on that issue than a lot of people realise. He was even talking quite recently, not in government, but quite recently, about how GPs shouldn't be privatised, how they should be employees of the NHS. So this is actually very pro-nationalisation. It's just that I think he's going to, get caught because he has talked with private health providers, and just because of the money he's been given, he is going to have to use private healthcare to get the NHS waiting list down, because he's not given enough money to do it any other way.
Yeah.
So,
well,
I think that is, a lot of those criticisms are probably a bit unfair, but his judgment is poor. He is very divisive. He's not very diplomatic. When I say not very diplomatic, I mean not at all diplomatic.
No, and that's why I think he gets the backs up of his own party. Like, it's fine, you're saying, yeah, he's great at like taking down the Tories, but as One Angry Pagans just pointed out, Darren Jones is bloody brilliant at that. Like, I'll watch clips and I'll see that I'll see a clip come up and I'll see that Darren Jones is in the clip somehow, and I'll be like, I'm going to watch this now, because he's always so good at taking them down. But Darren Jones doesn't come across to me as someone who would be problematic with other people in the party, whereas I can see where Streeting, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone who knows that the inside track on this, but he comes across as someone who sort of agitates people in his own party.
I think he does agitate people unnecessarily. Like, sometimes you do need to be in your face, and I actually wish Keir Starmer was a bit more in your face with certain people. But Streeting does it. It's like, one thing you learn as either a parent or a teacher, I've been the latter, is you have to pick your battles.
Yeah.
And he doesn't.
Yeah. Ivan Ambrose has just dropped a humongous £20 super chat on us. Thank you very, very much for that, Ivan. I give credit where credit is due, and I speak as I find. Wes Streeting is the only health secretary who has responded to me about my years and years of autism campaigning. I got no responses from his Tory predecessors. So thanks for the super chat, and thanks for pointing that out, in Wes Streeting's corner.
To be fair, though, to the Tory predecessors, none of them were in post long enough to get a letter.
That's very true. How many did we have? 13?
Quite a lot.
Something absolutely, appalling like that. Something else. So we were talking about Labour and whether they are delivering, and that they have had a very, very bumpy road. They've had no honeymoon period. I was talking about this. Not even the economy has had a honeymoon period. We saw this morning that the economy shrank by 0.1%.
I'll tell you another thing as well, because I keep saying, I'm not saying it's a perfect model, but the rate you get on YouTube is not bad. So the rates over the last few years have been usually in the latter half of the year, you get massive rates because they're spending loads on advertising, and it's been a bit suppressed the last few years. But this year, this December has actually been awful. So yes. I'm going to guess that when the December figures come out, they're going to be woeful.
Yeah.
Because the rate this December, it's by far and away.
What is it? Do you know what it is?
Well, for me, it's £2.77 per 1,000 views.
Yeah.
And just to tell you, back in 2020, when we had a pissing pandemic, it was just shy of £5.
Wow.
Last year it was £3.14, and that's the lowest it had been for some years. Again, it's, as the economy struggles,
yeah.
I imagine, I don't work in advertising, Marina would probably know more, Marina Perkis, but I imagine advertising budgets are the first to be cut. But it's been this year, the rate this year overall, the year has actually been better than last year. But the rate in the last few months, those crucial months when you think you're going to be wanting to get lots of advertising done ahead of Christmas, really down. And that is, again, what the news are talking about, low consumer confidence. That would partly be a sign of it. We've had businesses saying they're not going to plan on hiring as much because of the national insurance policy. And I look at December's rates and I just think, yeah, December's figures are going to be terrible.
Yeah, yeah. So just good to go back onto sort of Labour and some of the missteps perhaps that they've made. So tell us about BlackRock. I mean, this came out while I was away, and they put out a statement saying that they wanted to work with BlackRock. Now, the only thing I know about BlackRock is that they were involved heavily in the Iraq War as one of the big contractors, and they got into a lot of trouble, but seemed to get away with it as...
They are also a massive investor in everything, though. So you literally can't do anything without them being involved. So there is a sense in which, people can absolutely show a bit of concern because at the end of the day, they are people just after a profit. And that's always a concern in public services. But you literally can't do anything without their involvement. They are such a massive investor in everything. Yeah. Pensions, everything. Yeah. So, there's a sense in which people, will... The alarm is only because it's a private organisation involved in investment. But the other side of it, and my attitude is it's quite nuanced on this, because on the one hand, I always think if a private company can invest money and expect to get a return for a public service, then the government can do the same thing. Right? So why don't we do that? But we know the reason why they don't do that, because Liz Truss demonstrated it very aptly. Like Rachel Reeves has raised certain amounts of tax and she's borrowing £32 billion. And that caused a bit of a market wobble, but then that was only because it was more than expected. They sort of, we're all right with this. So if she only spent that money that she can raise from taxes and borrowing, we are not going to get the investment we need. So the only way to get the investment is either you borrow a lot more, in which case you crash the pound and you're out of government next year, or you get private investment in. And that is the reality. And it's why, although I hate private investment in public services, because I know economically it's a bad idea.
Yes.
I also know politically it's like, what's the solution? Do we actually have low investment? Because then you're going to lose the next election. I mean, Labour are absolutely hammering, for example, this house building, and they're going, they're getting rid of any objections they're saying to council. And councils, by the way, are being given 12 weeks. They're not being given time. They're not being told, you are going to build houses or we are going to make the decision for you. Because Labour know they're on a timer right now. Yeah. You have to start building before those houses can be completed. So they're giving them 12 weeks to get their plans in place. And if Labour don't think those plans are any good, they're going to take over the work themselves, because they are utterly determined to make sure these houses, and including affordable housing, gets built.
Yeah. as soon as possible. I mean, the backlash in the Tory press against Labour's house building is monumental, and it's incredibly frustrating because the people who are complaining about it are the house owners who think, oh, but then the value of my property won't continue to spiral upwards uncontrollably. And you're like, you selfish bastards! Like, you've got a house, you've paid off your mortgage, and you want to stop anyone else doing that. Do you know what I mean? Ladder kickers.
But it's worse than that, because they're kicking the ladder away whilst being on a burning deck themselves, because they're voting for the party that's going to tell them to sell that house to pay for their care in old age.
Yeah. BUFU Mike is saying we should follow the Norwegian model. I was just thinking about the Norwegian Sovereign Wealth Fund, actually. I mentioned it this morning. And have time-limited private ownership of public services, after which they revert to being nationalised, which is a good idea, because the public-private partnership that was implemented for the NHS under the Blair administration, that we're still suffering from that now, because they have contracts in place, for instance, where the services, say the cleaning services or the electrical services for a hospital, is still run by that private company forever. And so they're charging hundreds of pounds to change a freaking light bulb, and they're going ka-ching, and that's being paid for by the taxpayer.
And that's the thing. And that's where with PFI, it's like, so for some of the stuff we needed massive amounts of investment really quickly, and they could only borrow and tax so much. But for other stuff, it was stupid. Like the cleaning, as you mentioned, for me is one of the stupidest things, because you need cleaners all the time. That's not like buying in a load of new medical equipment or building something. You need cleaners. Just pay the bloody cleaners yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not major investment. So that should never have been privatised.
Yeah. I really feel like the Blair government really dropped the ball on that. And also public transport. I mean, they had 13 years to sort public transport out, and they didn't even start, Phil. Like, they didn't even look at anything. And now we're looking at renationalising after, the British public have been absolutely rinsed over the last 20, 25 years by these private companies that run all our trains and run all our buses, unless you're in London. I feel like they could have done more. Do you think in a few years' time you might be saying exactly the same thing about Starmer's government? Like, they could have done more, they should have done more?
Oh, yeah. But I will always say that, like, 80% of everything they'll do, I think, is not... Like, there's some things I understand they're doing it for political reasons, but even then it's like, they can still make mistakes. Yeah. They could still make mistakes. So there will be some policies I'll go, look, I understand that you need to do this to get certain groups of voters on board. There will be things that they will have done that weren't needed for that will actually just be mistakes, because no one's perfect anyway. So there'll always be some of that, as long as they don't do something stupid like invade Iraq again. But I don't think they will.
Please don't invade Iraq again.
I don't think they're going to.
Please don't. No, don't.
Don't. I mean, apart from anything else, the fact that Starmer has appointed an actual senior lawyer as Attorney General means that won't happen. Because remember, when Blair was doing that, his main law officer resigned over the matter, but he didn't have a ministerial resignation, because they're all politicians. So the fact that we have a non-political Attorney General now means that's him basically saying, I do not intend to break the law, because if I do break the law, it's going to be very messy, because he has got no political reason to lie for me.
Yeah. Unlike the Tories, who wanted to break the law in a limited and specific way.
Well, I mean, Boris Johnson made Suella Braverman Attorney General specifically because she would just say that anything he wanted to do was legal.
Yeah. I will make it legal.
She was the most dishonest Attorney General we've ever had.
Ivan has dropped a £20 super chat in. Thank you so much, Ivan. And a big shout out to Max. Hi, Max, who's watching. The Tories have no room whatsoever to point the finger about the economy, even though they will. Of course. Enough is enough with the press and the media, Phil. Why isn't Labour prioritising the overhaul of the press and the media?
Well, it's like you say, it's prioritisation, isn't it? They think their main priority has to be doing all the things, like getting housing sorted, getting transport sorted, getting energy sorted, increasing people's pay and stuff like that, the NHS waiting list. So they've got all these, if you look in any government department, they've got all these massive priorities. In the Department for Business, you've got dealing with, the EU. And they've got all these priorities, and they think that the media is important, but they also think it's a priority for later. Because they think from their point of view, I suppose they think that it doesn't matter what state the media is in a few years' time. If they go to the public in 2028, 2029, and housing's still a mess, and transport's still a mess, and the NHS is still a mess, that they're knackered anyway.
True, but I mean, the drip feed of hatred towards the EU over the course of 30 years led to the EU referendum. And I would like them to go some way to stymie this constant drip of poison from the press, from the media. And also we need regulations when it comes to social media as well. And AI, we seem to be just behind the curve on this. Like, why isn't it a law right now that if you make an AI image of a real person in a sexual manner, that's sexual assault? And the platform that you made it on can be sued, and it can be an unlimited fine. You know, like if you made a copy of Ghostbusters on a VHS tape, that was an unlimited fine. Well, it should be the same. That's it.
It should.
That is a sexual assault that you've committed.
I think these should be higher priority, and I think the government should see them as higher priority. But I also get how they don't. I get how they're, because the public don't see them, because they're focusing on what the public see as those priorities, which are, the public don't see social media as a big issue, other than for like specific things like the riots. And I think that's just the reason. But I mean, I think they could do themselves a lot more favors as well if they stopped pandering to like legacy media in particular, and use social media more. I mean, we had today, because are
we going to talk about Labour comms, Phil? Are we going to talk about Labour comms?
The front page of like the Metro today was going on about this sandwich war. There is no sandwich war. Kemi Badenoch yesterday tried to turn bread into a culture war. Someone asked Keir Starmer's spokesperson, and he basically said, "Yeah, he likes sandwiches. What's up?" And today you had a newscaster like Ed Miliband's trying to talk about energy, and you got this cretin of a journalist saying, "Can I ask you about sandwiches?" And he put, he's a good lad, Ed Miliband. I said, "Oh yeah, I'm always here for sandwich discussions," but nonetheless, it's like this was Sky or something. It's like, why are you treating the legacy media seriously when they're not serious? Like, just get your messages out. You could get your messages out yourself. These news programs wouldn't last if they couldn't get ministers on them. They wouldn't last.
It's painful when those stupid questions dominate the media. But this is the problem that
I'll show you another thing. Right,
the media's got so used to sensational headlines every day of salacious gossip of a Tory MP doing something horrible, or saying something horrible, and when that isn't happening, they've got nothing to write about. They're like, things are boring now and not exciting. So get Kemi Badenoch to say something daft, and we will make a big thing about it. She did say she didn't like moist sandwiches, so the idea.
She said she wouldn't touch moist bread, so I think she's now having a pop at soup.
Yes. So I just think it'd be really funny if someone dressed up as a big slice of moist bread.
But like on The Guardian right now, in terms of the politics thing, the most viewed story is "I will not touch bread if it's moist."
Yes.
So it's not even just the media. Like, this is what people are choosing to click on as well. So even given that some of the stories in there will be from a few days ago, it's like, so we do it to ourselves. People have to accept responsibility that they're clicking on the bloody stupid things.
Yeah, but it's so stupid. It's funny. It like she said, as Siskin Edge points out, I think Kemi Badenoch needs to check her privilege about why take lunch break when you can just have people serve you steak while you work, which is basically what she said. Like, it was a mad interview. It was for the Spectator magazine, I think, for Michael Gove. So she's talking to an ex-Tory MP, and there's
cabinet colleague,
the revolving
the one
door
who actually promoted
journalism and the Tory
Michael
MP.
Gove actually thrust. We wouldn't even know who Kemi Badenoch was. if it weren't for Michael Gove. He was the one who thrust her into the limelight in 2022 when Boris Johnson stepped down. So she's his protege.
I mean, she's not showing herself in glory so far. She's coming across as quite a bit of an idiot.
Oh, she's awful. She's absolutely
in fact,
awful.
PMQs, she's just appalling. Like from the get go, she had a go at like Keir Starmer for reading like his notes, and she was reading her notes.
Yeah. Well, Keir Starmer pointed that out. It's one of the times when he's really come up and thought on his feet properly, or it's been really obvious. And he said, "Yeah, you'd have a better line on that, love, if you weren't reading it out yourself." Not his exact words, but she was absolutely. I mean, yesterday it was absolutely appalling. It's like there's always going to be difficulties. Like the Tories have just had their arse handed to them, and Labour are new in government. So we should be in that honeymoon period, which, yes, actually now doesn't exist.
No.
And yet, so she's got various lines that Labour have fed her on a plate. She could go on about the winter fuel allowance. She can go on about that every single week. Because you know what? At some point, the Daily Mail are going to have a front page of some old dear who died because their home was too cold and she didn't get the winter fuel allowance. They're just going to find one person and it'll be all over the place. It's an absolute disaster waiting to happen. She could be teeing that up. She could have gone on about the farmers' protests again.
Yeah.
She could even, if she had nothing else to talk about, wang on about VAT on public schools, private schools. But no, she decides yesterday, and she actually acknowledged it. Oh, the Prime Minister seems to want to talk about immigration. Let's talk about that. Are you mad? You want to talk about the thing that he wants to talk about? Do you not understand how opposition works?
Shh.
And
don't tell her. Don't tell her. Don't tell him, Pike.
Like, Keir Starmer doesn't have a record on very much at all because he hasn't had time to anything. Ironically, immigration is one thing where he has now got a record. He can boast record deportations of failed asylum seekers. Yeah. And she decided to ask him questions on that.
Yes.
The Tories are back. They're bollocks. They're absolutely bollocks. We're going to have to get used to the fact that Reform UK will be the main right-wing party at some point if this carries on.
Well, this is the worry, isn't it?
Well, long term, I still think I do wonder if Reform UK have a long-term plan. Because think about it this way. So Nigel Farage is like 60. But he boozes and smokes a lot. So imagine 10 years' time he's 70. I mean, he's not really going to be a very healthy 70-year-old, is he? He's not likely to be. Unless he's genetically, like, immune to whatever he's doing to his body.
Trump's still alive and he just lives off burgers.
Yeah, that is true.
Elvis only made it to his early 40s,
didn't he? Like, in this country, you won't get away with Trump's brainworms like that. If Nigel Farage wasn't sharp, he wouldn't get away with it in this country. I'm not trying to say we're somehow special, but there's a real weird hegemony in America that doesn't exist in this country. And
I
Trump
don't know. I
get
disagree.
away.
Do you know why? Boris Johnson. I mean, he
Boris
stood
Johnson
up and started talking about Peppa Pig Land, and he was our Prime Minister.
Happened? He wasn't, though. That's the whole point. That was when he was on his way out at that point, because people turned on Boris Johnson once he started talking obvious shit.
I thought it was more to do with the parties, but
it was all everything. But as soon as Boris Johnson, as soon as people saw that he wasn't doing what they wanted him to do, he was gone. He lost support immediately. Trump would also have no chance if it weren't for the fact he took over one of only two parties that exist in the United States.
Yeah, but as far as people in this country tolerating a dickhead, a rich, posh dickhead standing up and talking bollocks for 3 hours, people still spend money to go and see Boris Johnson talk.
Yeah, but not many. It's like they what they listened to. Anyway, my point is, if Nigel Farage's health takes a turn for the worse, I'm not sure. I don't think there is much of a cult of. I mean, I think MAGA's knackered if Trump goes.
Yes, I think it absolutely is. They haven't got anyone.
Whereas Reform UK could still carry on.
With Richard Tice.
They wouldn't. Well, they were. I mean, when Nigel Farage was last leader of Reform UK, they were on like 1.5%. in terms of voting intention, and Richard Tice got them up much higher than that. But nonetheless, Nigel Farage attracts a lot of personal support.
Yes. Which I don't think Tice would ever get that. I mean, Tice is there's no bonhomie with him.
No, absolutely not. There's no charisma. But so the way I'm thinking is, if Labour can win the next election quite handsomely, and there's a reasonable chance they can, despite what's happening right now, then if you think that Labour come into trouble in 10 years' time, in what sort of state will Nigel Farage be in 10 years' time? Will he still be fit and healthy? He may not. If his mind goes like Trump's, he won't get away with it like Trump.
Well, we live in hope. Super chat from Ivan. Thank you very much, sir. What will it take to get the Lib Dems to be the official opposition? Well, this is something that we wanted to see happen in the last election. It felt like it was quite close in the end. I mean, it was 80 odd Lib Dem MPs and only 121 Tory MPs. There's only
72. But it was more. It was closer than that because there was a lot of seats that Lib Dems could have taken off the Tories if the tactical vote message had got out. What we needed. Carol Vorden was basically like the torchbearer for tactical voting amongst like the mainstream media. What we needed was a few others, and there were some that joined in the last couple of days. Too late. We needed more people who reckon they're progressive to use their platforms to promote tactical voting. Yeah. And even if they only do it to get the Lib Dems into the official opposition position next time. But I mean, it could naturally happen anyway if the Tories carry on being utterly shit.
And Reform split the vote.
And Reform split the vote. I mean, the problem now will be Reform may well have a lot of the Tory vote already, so it's now eating a bit into Labour's potentially over the next few years. But again, that could go in the other direction if Labour do deliver on things like housing.
Yeah. Well, but housing, NHS, education.
Yeah. Well, education, I don't think the Gammons are all that bothered about.
I know, but they need to keep on those because you're right. People need to see their lives getting better. Investments in city centres. So when they go out, and this is why I was quite the bit of the budget that I thought was the worst bit was the lifting of the cap on not lifting, but the raising of the cap on bus fares from £2 to £3. I thought that was a huge mistake. I'm sure there could have been savings made elsewhere that weren't so freaking obvious. But I tell you now, anyone who has to get the bus every day to town, to work, wherever, and back will notice that every single day.
It won't. It's the people who don't get it every day that'll notice it. The people who get the bus every single day get a weekly saver.
Yeah, which is going to go up in the cost. It's going to go up in price.
Well, we'll see. But I still agree that they shouldn't have done it because it does still piss off a lot of people who get the bus now and then. Yeah.
I mean, for a family of 4, it's cheaper to get an Uber into town than get the bus. That is mad. There's objectively just a crazy way of doing things. Anyway, Max wants to know if you're Britain's Joe Rogan, but a good one. Are you Britain's Joe Rogan?
No, because no one knows me. No one knows who I am.
Do you not like commentate on the wrestling or nothing?
No.
Do you not interview people who are obvious fascists and platform them on your platform to get the?
Do you know there's only one person I've ever invited to talk on my channel and they've accepted, and it was only quite recently. It was that Professor Wolf.
Mike's talking on your channel, hasn't he?
Oh yeah, but he asked. There's been a few people on the channel this year, ironically. All of those others asked because I never turned anyone down. But in terms of people I have asked, because I'm really bad at it. In terms of people I have asked, I've only had one person say yes. Most ignore me, to be fair. They don't always tell me to fuck off. The odd one has. But he jumped straight on it. I got him straight away to talk about the old situation with Trump and Ukraine.
Yeah. But would you have people on your show who you
only every now
disagreed with? Would you get someone who's just horrible? Like
No, I'd only get someone if they were genuine. Like I have talked about the fact I'd love to get Conservatives on my show, but they have to be honest within their own views. Otherwise, what's the point?
Yeah.
I'm not interested in a debating competition. I'm interested in views. And if people aren't going to give me views, they're just going to give me silly talking points designed to warp someone else's views, then there is no point in that. If they want to invite me on their show, they can do, but I'm not going to waste my own, because interviews also don't do as well because they tend to be longer, a bit more rambling, and some of the people you get on, they just don't get as many views. They don't get as many views. So every now and then I'd like experts. I do like to talk to experts.
Yes.
It's just that I don't get to do it because they all tell me to go away. And it's a skill deficiency on my part, because I was talking. I've forgotten his name now. There's someone who started doing podcasts, pro-Labour podcasts. I'm very bad with names. And I was talking to him a few weeks ago to offer some advice, because he was putting some of them on YouTube and they weren't doing very well. But for example, he had some videos with John Curtis on, Professor John Curtis. And I thought, he's taking his time out to do videos with you and he's getting a few hundred views, and that's really nice of him. Yeah. he'd have had tens of thousands of views on my channel. I've asked him and he told me to go away. He didn't tell me to go away, I'm going to say. He just ignored me. He's one of the ones who just ignored me. But
maybe it just went straight into his spam box.
Maybe it did. It may well have done. But that's my point, is that I'm a hermit, you see. So I'm not very good at networking with people. I'm not social at all. So I'm also no good at but it's fine, because it's not like interviews unless it's on something I can't look up, because that's the ideal. Yeah. There's something I want to talk about. I can read as much as I like, but I need actual experts to give me some specific answers. And I'd quite like them to be able to do it in the next couple of days. I don't have that sort of draw, so I can't really get it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen. Just we've got about 7 minutes left. So, where do you think that Labour have delivered, and where do you think that you feel like they're struggling?
It's hard to say, because at the moment there's hardly any legislation gone through. Ironically, the only legislation that's really gone through is the one that was put forward by the cabinet minister who's now not there, for the railway stuff. So we can't tell. We honestly can't tell. We can sound positive. We can say Labour, they sound bloody serious about building, and they're really serious about energy, cleaner energy. And, and we just know they're going to get the NHS waiting list down. That's a given. It's Labour, for goodness sake. So there's certain things we can be positive about. But what have they actually done? They went along with the significantly above inflation pay awards. There's a bit of argy-bargy about what may come next year now. But, that was good to begin with. You've got, they've pissed off Jeremy Clarkson, so was good. But it's far too early to really say whether they're going to deliver or not, because the legislation is currently going through, like the things are being done, and you can't see the impact of it just yet. We haven't even had the budget implemented yet. The first budget, nothing's happened apart from, we're now in a position to nationalise some rail companies. Some are already nationalised because the Tories nationalised them. They were that bad.
This relaunch, as it was, a soft relaunch from Keir Starmer's speech last week.
Which they don't like to call it that, but it basically was.
Yeah. There was some chatter that they were panicking, that they were literally panicking because they're looking at the polls, and
they should bloody panic.
They've got off.
If you're not. Admittedly, the problem with the polls is there's actually not very many polls being conducted, because polls have to be commissioned, and no one's really interested in commissioning voting intention polls just after a general election. So you've got very few polls coming out, which means inevitably the people who are commissioning them are the ones who want to show that they're doing well, like Reform UK. Reform UK have commissioned a couple of these voting intention polls, and inevitably they're going to commission shit pollsters. So we've had a higher proportion of shit polls come out.
Right.
That, when they're saying, for example, that Reform UK has the highest voting intention of any party, you're going, hey, behave. But there is also no doubting that Labour have catastrophically crashed in the polls, and they shouldn't have done. You could understand a bit of a drop off because it's like, like I keep saying, like government it's more like a fast food restaurant than like a posh, like you go to a posh restaurant, a proper restaurant, you have your food, very nice, then you pay for it. Fast food restaurant, you pay for it first and then you get your food after it. And this is what's happening. We're paying for it. That's not popular. We get the benefits. We get like the chicken in a bucket in a couple of years. So you might expect a bit of grumbling, but they have, the winter fuel, the way they've done the winter fuel allowance, the inheritance tax with farmers, the bus fare thing, not dealing with the stories about the gifts. All of this has created a sense that Labour are a bit lost at sea, not helped by Keir Starmer now having a pop at civil servants.
Yeah.
He's one step away from talking about the woke blob and giving Liz Truss the biggest grin on her face we've ever seen.
The woke blob. The tofu eating wokevarty.
Oh, the Wall Street Journal brought out a video like trying to back her up again recently. It was painful to watch. But it's so they
was that the same Wall Street Journal that was writing that Javier Milei in Argentina was doing a fantastic bang up job, even though he's plunged half the country into poverty. We've got a super chat and we've got some gifted memberships. So I'm going to go through these now. We've got Ivan Ambrose, £2 super chat. Thank you very much. Stopping the Rwanda policy equals good. Yeah, that was like day one, wasn't it? That was the Friday. So they were elected on the Friday morning, and by the Friday evening, they'd scrapped the Rwanda policy. Or at least they announced they'd scrapped it. Russell Cannon, thank you very much. Gifted 5 Politics Social membership. I'll give you a super chat thing, but because I don't have a membership animation. And so Commander Max Headroom, Jane Lockwood, QA Library, Joe Lefty, Vaddelman are all being gifted memberships by Russell Cannon. I'm sorry that's coming up so small on the screen here. It's just that I haven't got the right size of font set for membership notifications, which is obviously a different title. Anyway, so Svax gifted 10 Politics Social memberships. It must be Christmas. Thank you very much, Svax. So The Cheese Factor, Bruno Genius, Dent Diz, The Rusted Dynamo, Electric Gaming, Robin Moore, Yurosh, Wok, Craig Findlay, Ozzy, Amy and Ozzy all got gift memberships from Svax. So thanks very much for that. So we've got loads more members on the channel. So thanks for all that. And Svax was hoping that Max would have got one of the memberships. I think Max has already got one, hasn't he? I don't know. We'll have to check. But thanks very much, Svax. That was really kind of you. And Siskin Edge is saying, so cancel on the funding. We were talking before, someone mentioned that one of the things that they need to do is to put a reban, because it used to be banned, buy-to-let mortgages, which until 1996, you couldn't get one. Yeah. And then 1996, the Tories said, oh, here's a good idea. Let's allow people to buy a house, get their tenants to pay for their mortgage for it.
Yeah.
For either their hard work or government money or a bit of both.
I would be in favour of banning that. I know Labour they seem to be restricting it, but they're not banning it, and I really don't know why.
Yeah, they really should do. Colin says, Starmer's criticism of civil servants was a huge misstep. I don't disagree on that. Most officials are not highly paid individuals and should be protected, not condemned. I agree with that. I was a bit surprised that he said that about
and then they sent out Pac McFadden, which seems to be the only diplomatic member of the cabinet, to then put the focus on the way the civil service works rather than individual civil servants, which is what Keir Starmer should have made clear. Yeah. That it's the system he has an issue with, not the people working it.
Yeah, indeed. And one Angry Pagan says, "Do I see Brock behind you?" Yes, that's Brock sitting on the seat over there. Yeah, and Phil's got Phil. What's your badger's name? Did anyone name your badger?
It has a name. I just call him the Badger of Calm.
Badger of Calm. The Badger of Zen. Brilliant. And Clupid Bloverscope is saying, "I disagree. Labour are delivering anger to every section of the electorate."
Nah.
Hashtag just saying. Just saying.
They're delivering anger to people who don't like Labour anyway. But at the same time, it'd still be better if they weren't delivering anger to anyone. Even Jeremy Clarkson in this season of goodwill to all potatoes.
What? Even Clarkson. Anyway. All right. Well, listen, Phil, thanks so much for joining us on this special edition of The Agenda. The first one in a month. We haven't done this for a month.
Yes.
So we've both had better things to do. But hopefully you watching this will join me tonight for the Friday night social at 9:30, and we'll try and get as many people on that as we can, different voices. We've got a lot of things to talk about. I think Aid really wants to talk about AI, but I don't know if he's going to be able to make the show tonight because he's usually knackered by 9:30.
He needs to give you his virtual form, and you could put that up instead.
Oh, yes. That's a good idea. We'll make an AI Aid. Because aid starts with AI, so you could have capital A, capital I, D. Yeah, I'm going to suggest that now. I'm going to text him. Right, thanks so much for the super chats. Thanks for all the gifted memberships. Thanks for all the awesome chat. Obviously, thanks to Phil. And hopefully we'll see you at 9:30 tonight. And until then, I'll just say thank you very much for watching. Hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.